Warning: the following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Accordingly, viewer discretion is advised. In the autumn of 1977, the city of Los Angeles began finding bodies on its hillsides. Young women. Nude. Carefully cleaned. Posed. Strangled. The press gave the killer a name, the Hillside Strangler. Singular. One man. A lone predator prowling the hills of LA. They were wrong. There were two of them. Cousins. Living in plain sight. One of them was applying for jobs with the very police department hunting him. And being taken on ride-alongs through the city while officers searched for the killer he was. Between October 1977 and February 1978, Kenneth Bianchi and Angelo Buono raped, tortured, and murdered 10 young women and girls in Los Angeles. Their victims ranged in age from 12 to 28 years old. This is the story of the Hillside Stranglers. To understand how two men could terrorize a city for months without being caught, you first need to understand who they were and what made them so difficult to identify. Angelo Buono Jr. was born on October 5, 1934, in Rochester, New York, to Sicilian immigrants. He moved to Glendale, California as a child after his parents divorced. From his earliest years, Buono was defined by violence and contempt, particularly toward women. As a teenager he openly boasted to classmates about raping girls. He idolized a serial rapist named Carol Chessman, a man convicted of kidnapping, robbery and rape, and considered him a personal hero. He dropped out of school at 16. Was sent to reform school. Escaped. By adulthood, Buono had built a respectable front, a successful auto upholstery business in Glendale. He married multiple times. He had children. To the outside world he was a hard-working, unremarkable small business owner. Behind that front, he was one of the most dangerous men in California. Kenneth Bianchi was born on May 22, 1951, also in Rochester, New York, to a teenage prostitute who gave him up for adoption 2 weeks after his birth. He was adopted by an Italian-American couple and raised as their only child. He was charming. Handsome. Persuasive. He told people he was a psychology student, a police officer, a doctor, whatever the situation required. He could look someone in the eye and lie without flinching. In January 1976, Bianchi moved to Los Angeles to live with his older cousin Angelo Buono. The two men immediately found a common interest. They became pimps. They recruited 2 young women and forced them into prostitution. When both women eventually escaped, one with the help of a lawyer, one simply by running, Buono and Bianchi were left without income. They decided to find more girls. And they decided that this time they wouldn't let them leave. What made Buono and Bianchi uniquely dangerous was their method. They posed as police officers. They had obtained fake badges, and they used them with devastating effectiveness. Approaching young women on the street, in parking lots, outside their workplaces, flashing badges, identifying themselves as undercover officers, telling their targets they needed to come with them for questioning. The victims complied. Why wouldn't they? 2 men. Official badges. An unmarked car. Everything looked exactly as it should. There were no defense wounds on any of the victims. They went along willingly, because they believed they were in the hands of the law. Once inside the car, the women were handcuffed. Driven to Buono's upholstery shop on Colorado Street in Glendale. And taken inside. All but one of the 10 murders were committed there, in a building that, in daylight hours, was a normal functioning business. Customers came in. Work got done. Nobody suspected anything. Inside that shop, the victims were raped, sodomized, beaten, and tortured. Buono and Bianchi experimented with different methods of killing: lethal injection, electric shock, carbon monoxide poisoning. Eventually they settled on ligature strangulation, binding the neck with a cord or rope. Afterwards, the bodies were meticulously cleaned. Every trace of evidence washed away. Then the women were driven to the hillsides surrounding Los Angeles. Dumped on slopes and roadsides, naked, posed, left to be found. It was the cleaning that most disturbed investigators. It suggested not panic or impulse, but calculation. Control. Two men who knew exactly what they were doing and took the time to do it carefully. The first victim was Yolanda Washington, a 19-year-old sex worker and part-time waitress. Her body was found on October 18, 1977, on a hillside near the Ventura Freeway. She had been raped, strangled, and cleaned before being dumped. Within weeks, more bodies appeared. Judith Miller, 15 years old. Lissa Caston, a waitress saving money for ballet lessons. 21 years old. Then came the murders that shook Los Angeles to its core. On November 13, 1977. A 9-year-old boy exploring a dump site near Highland Park climbed over a pile of old mattresses and found two bodies. From a distance, he thought they were mannequins. They were Dolores Cepeda and Sonia Johnson. Dolores was 12 years old. Sonia was 14. They had been abducted together after getting off a bus in Eagle Rock. They had been at Buono's shop together. They had been murdered together. The murders of two middle-class schoolgirls sent a wave of terror through the city. This was no longer a case involving only victims who might be dismissed or overlooked. This was every parent's nightmare made real. The killings continued. Christina Weckler, 20 years old. An art student who lived in the same apartment complex as Bianchi, selected because he knew her, because she trusted him, because when a man you recognize from your building says he needs to talk to you outside, you go. Jane King, 28 years old. Lauren Wagner, 18. Kimberly Martin, 17. The final victim was Cindy Lee Hudspeth, 20 years old. A student and part-time waitress who had come to Buono's shop to discuss upholstery work on her car. The two men saw an opportunity. They took it. Her body was found in the trunk of her own car, pushed off a cliff on the Angeles Crest Highway by the men who had killed her. 10 women and girls. 12 to 28 years old. 4 months. Then the murders stopped. Los Angeles Police Department assembled a 52-man task force. Officers from the LAPD, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and the Glendale Police Department all fed into the investigation. They had almost nothing to work with. The bodies were clean. Forensic evidence was minimal. The fake police officer ruse meant witnesses saw what looked like a legitimate police stop, nothing suspicious, nothing to report. The press continued to call him the Hillside Strangler. Singular. Some investigators suspected there might be two perpetrators. The crime scene suggested a level of control that was difficult for one person alone, but publicly the narrative remained focused on a single unknown killer. And while all of this was happening, Kenneth Bianchi was applying for a job with the Los Angeles Police Department. Let that land. While officers were scouring the city for the Hillside Strangler. One of the Hillside Stranglers was submitting job applications to join their department. He was invited on ride-alongs. He sat in police cars. He drove through the same hillsides where the bodies of his victims had been found, alongside the officers hunting him. He didn't get the job. But he wasn't caught either. By early 1978, the murders had stopped. Buono and Bianchi had fallen out, their relationship deteriorating under the weight of what they had done together. Bianchi eventually moved north to Bellingham, Washington, in May 1978. For a period, the city exhaled. The Hillside Strangler appeared to have vanished. In Bellingham, Bianchi had reinvented himself again. He was working as a security guard. He had a girlfriend. A young son. A quiet, ordinary life on the surface. Underneath, nothing had changed. On January 11, 1979, Bianchi lured two female students from Western Washington University, Karen Mandick and Diane Wilder, to a house he was guarding, under the pretense of offering them a house-sitting job. He raped and strangled both of them. But this time he made mistakes. He left traces. His car, with California plates, was spotted near the scene. He was connected to the victims through phone records. Within days he was arrested. In custody, Bianchi initially tried a remarkable strategy. Having watched the films Sybil and The Three Faces of Eve, both about multiple personality disorder, he claimed to have an alternate personality named Steve who had committed the murders. 3 psychiatrists examined him. All 3 concluded he was faking. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the prospect of the death penalty, Bianchi made a deal. He would plead guilty and testify against Angelo Buono. On October 22, 1979, Buono was arrested at his upholstery shop in Glendale. He told reporters, "I haven't done nothing. They won't find nothing, 'cause I ain't did nothing." The trial of Angelo Buono became one of the longest and most complex criminal trials in California history, lasting 2 full years. The prosecution faced an extraordinary challenge. Bianchi, who had agreed to testify against his cousin, proved deeply unreliable on the stand. He contradicted himself repeatedly, appeared to be actively trying to undermine the prosecution's case while technically fulfilling his deal. Buono's defense pointed to a critical fact. There was virtually no physical evidence tying Buono to the crimes. His home had been so thoroughly cleaned that investigators couldn't find even his own fingerprints inside it. Despite this, after more than 400 witnesses testified over 2 years, the jury convicted Angelo Buono on 9 counts of murder in November 1983. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He never expressed a single word of remorse. He died of a heart attack in his cell at Calipatria State Prison on September 21, 2002. He was 67 years old. Bianchi received life imprisonment with the possibility of parole for his role in 5 of the California murders, plus 2 additional consecutive life terms for the Bellingham murders. He has been denied parole 8 times. Most recently in July 2025. He is still alive. Still in Washington State Penitentiary. Still applying for parole. There is one final detail that deserves to be remembered. In 1977, Bianchi and Buono had stopped a young woman on the street, flashed their fake badges, ordered her into the car. They were about to take her to the upholstery shop. Then Bianchi found her ID. Her name was Catherine Laurie. Her father was Peter Laurie, the famous actor. Fearing that the disappearance of a celebrity's daughter would bring too much attention, they let her go. Catherine Laurie had no idea how close she had come. She only found out years later, after their arrests, that the 2 men who had stopped her that night were the Hillside Stranglers. 10 women and girls lost their lives to 2 men who hid behind fake badges and a functioning business in a city that couldn't imagine 2 killers working together in plain sight. Yolanda Washington. Judith Miller. Lissa Caston. Dolores Cepeda. Sonia Johnson. Christina Weckler. Jane King. Lauren Wagner. Kimberly Martin. Cindy Lee Hudspeth. The youngest was 12 years old. Kenneth Bianchi applied for jobs with the police. He sat in patrol cars. He drove past the hillsides where the bodies of his victims lay. And nobody caught him, not because they weren't trying, but because the person they were looking for was sitting right next to them. Angelo Buono ran a business in Glendale for years after the murders ended. Customers came in. Work got done. The upholstery shop on Colorado Street looked exactly like what it was supposed to be. Evil rarely announces itself. That's the lesson of the Hillside Stranglers. And it's a lesson that came at an unbearable cost. Subscribe if this case stayed with you. And leave a comment below, of all the details in this case, which one shocked you the most? I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you in the next one.